Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Fourth Progress Pondcast. I'm Martin Longman.
And I'm Brendan Squire. Today on the show, we're going to be discussing some really ugly anti-gay, anti-trans stuff going on right here in Pennsylvania. Before moving on to everybody's favorite hopeless hack, Kevin McCarthy, and how we're probably heading for a shutdown. But first, it's been a minute. Let's get caught up, Marty. Over here, summer's over. I'm back teaching, doing middle school this year. And while I can't really get into the specifics of my job, I will say that it's been a busy month. Plus, I'm training for marathon, working with 2 different bands, and I'm in the middle of moving.
Yeah, it's a good thing you're moving because the place you've been living is too much like Amsterdam from HBO's The Wire.
Oh my God. It's really hard to talk about, and it's probably a topic for a different episode. But for those of you out there in podcast land, I currently live just a few blocks from Kensington and Allegheny, which is ground zero for one of the worst, if not the worst, heroin crises in the country, and frankly, probably the world. I know that I remember reading that Mexico was using footage of Philadelphia and specifically K&A in anti-drug campaigns, ironically enough. But you hear sirens constantly. There's addicted people up and down the street, and the city's allowed this to happen. And now what's going on, of course, the deepest irony is that greedy developers are now trying to gentrify the place. And, but that's for another day. Suffice it to say, it's been a long month. Marty, I know that you got a kid of your own. He's in school. Everything going smoothly back to school?
Yeah, I mean, now that we got the wall-crawling fugitive in captivity again, I mean, that was crazy. Right now, it's just all soccer all the time, but we had the fugitive, the guy who climbed out of the jail, is national news. When they finally caught that guy, you saw it was like at the John Deere dealership or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm like in a wood pile.
Yeah, what about it?
Well, that's actually, that place sells appliances, and that's where I got my dishwasher.
No way.
Yeah. So I'm like watching the news and I'm like, oh, I know exactly where this guy's hiding, but they had everyone around here freaked out. They canceled my son's, he had a game, his first game of the season for his travel soccer team was canceled because the guy was on the loose in the rough area, last seen, I don't know, 5 miles from where the soccer field was. So that was pretty frustrating.
Yeah, I saw that footage. Your niece or someone sent you all those police cars blasting by. I mean, that whole story is wild.
That was after they captured him. So she's on her way to work, and all of a sudden there's, this cavalcade of cars, an armored vehicle that's got this guy, what's his name? I forget, Daniel Cavalcante or something like that. And Danilo Cavalcante. Anyway, he stabbed his girlfriend like 37 times. And that murder took place right up the street from me. So it's a real local story.
Yeah.
But yeah, so my niece was driving to work and she actually busted out her camera and she had sent us a video of the whole sequence of cars going by the other way. So
one of us should put that up on the Facebook page.
Yeah, we should. It was pretty exciting, I guess. I was just relieved they finally caught him so we could think about something else.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit about what's been going on in the Central Bucks County School District, which is right next door to you, if I remember. And this may be a little local for any of our listeners who don't live in southeastern PA, but that district has gone freaking bananas.
Oh yeah, that's for certain.
Bucks. I mean, like the thing is with Bucks, Bucks County's always leaned Republican, but my understanding was that they were pretty moderate Republicans, if you know what I mean. They weren't like the bomb throwers. They weren't the crazy MAGA people.
Our old buddy Patrick Murphy that we knew from Drinking Liberally, he was elected to Congress in 2006 from the Bucks County district, and he was a pretty moderate Democrat. And then ultimately he was defeated by a pretty moderate Republican who's still there. So I mean, it's not known for being too far out one way or the other, Bucks County.
Yeah, except now those Republicans aren't so moderate anymore. The Trump goons seem to have taken over the Central Bucks School District, and they have been on this jihad against the gay and trans students. It's remarkable what I'm seeing.
Yeah, you told me to you asked me to look into what was going on up there, and it appears to me it's not just like the goons on the school board, but also goons in the district administration, and then like goons among the parents who are showing up at these school board meetings, including they're like trucking people in from outside the district. Like they don't even have kids in the school, and they're showing up to be loud and disruptive at school board meetings.
My man, they had a school board meeting that descended into total chaos. I mean, I saw this on Doylestown on Tap or something, where some guy almost threw a chair at someone while they were debating whether someone else had brought a gun to a previous meeting of the board. One guy's like, it was just nuts.
Oh yeah, I saw a video of that. It was nuts, and you're right. I saw an article on it and said that people were lying on the sign-up sheet about whether they lived in the district, and then they come in, somebody throws a piece of paper at a guy's head, then he turns around, picks up a chair like he's going to throw it. Then the cops come in, escort people out. It's crazy what's going on with these school boards nowadays.
And like they were saying, they were representing like some concerned parents group or something. And I think it's just like a Facebook page and nothing else. Like it's like moron level AstroTurf.
Yeah, I mean, a ton of it, it's just this kind of anti-gay, anti-trans panic that's gripping the right in this country.
So that's where I'm going to go into the story that I've been watching. There's this teacher out in Central Bucks, Andrew Burgess, been teaching at Central Bucks for something like 14 years. Generally a friend of the LGBTQ kids out there. And he runs into this problem two years ago in 2022. A transgender kid who's getting bullied comes to him for help. And the kid had been going to the guidance department and the principal and everyone else and not getting the support they need to address the bullying by the other students.
Right.
So the teacher, this Burgess guy, tells him, look, and here's what's problematic is he's like, the way it works in Central Bucks, which doesn't sound right to me. He says, I can fill out a complaint, but if we do that, you don't get to remain anonymous, which I don't think is actually proper. And he says the school's going to call the bully's parents, and then they'll know it was you who lodged the complaint.
Yeah. I mean, if the policy is you can't report a bully anonymously, and then they're gonna tell the bully and the bully's parents who complained about him,
Yeah.
then you might make the problem worse.
Right. So the transgender kid and their parents didn't want to do that. And so instead, this dude Burgess helps them file a federal complaint with the U.S. Department of Ed, their Office for Civil Rights.
Yeah, because the district had already amply demonstrated that they weren't taking bullying seriously.
Yeah, that's basically exactly it. So then the district, they find out about the federal complaint, and so what they do is they accuse the teacher, they accuse this guy Burgess of failing to report the bullying properly. And so then what they do is they freaking frog march the guy out of the school in front of all the other kids. They seize his laptop. It's a complete humiliation. They suspend him without pay.
Yeah. Yeah. So he reports it to the Department of Education instead of them because the kid's parents don't want in a non-anonymous situation. And then they accuse him of not reporting the bullying, which he's obligated to do, and suspend him. And then, then they frog march him out. And then a bunch of kids get upset. They stage a walkout and protest. And then a bunch of them show up at the school board to defend the teacher.
Yeah, let's read from that for a minute. You went through the trouble of copying and pasting some of that, and what those kids were saying is well worth hearing. This is a direct quote. Mr. Burgess is one of the biggest allies I know. He's always there for anyone and everyone who needs it. There's a large group of LGBTQ plus students in my school, and most times we feel unsafe or out of place. They get mentally hurt by other students, and the teen suicide rate has been much higher than it should be. He always does his best to be there for everyone and does everything he can to keep that person safe and in a comfortable environment. The school always tells us to go to someone we feel safe talking to. This is true, and tells us to come to a trusted adult. But when a student simply does that and a teacher does something simple, he gets suspended. And that gets to the heart of the matter, because we're talking about bullying. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what actual policy is about that in the district in a minute. But the reason bullying is such an important thing to prevent is it leads to suicide. And it, in fact, leads directly to school shootings.
Right. I mean, for example, you remember that school shooting down in Nashville, Tennessee, where some people close to Governor Bill Lee got shot and killed.
Oh, yeah. I know exactly where that school is. I lived down there for about 4 years. But yeah, the shooter was a transgender man, Aiden Hale, born Audrey Hale. And he went back to his old elementary school and shot and killed three 9-year-old children and 3 adults, one of whom was friends with the governor's wife. And that shows what can happen if schools don't take bullying seriously. And I was just looking this up just before we started podcasting, just to see, what the link was between bullying and school shootings. And you know what? Back in 2022, Brookings did this study, Brookings Institute, and this is a quote. They found that, quote, the majority of school shooters are male, that's 95%, and white, 61%. Who, quote, feel marginalized. Indeed, almost half of those who perpetrate K-12 shootings report a history of rejection, with many experiencing bullying.
Right. That's the profile, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's the profile. People that have been bullied in the past, social outcasts, that's the profile. And, so, I mean, that question is like, what's the right way to handle this? I think Central Bucks is clearly not the right way, but I mean, you're a teacher, what are schools supposed to do in these kinds of situations?
Well, here's the thing, and I've been thinking about this ever since we started preparing for the podcast. As a teacher, my biggest responsibility isn't exactly teaching kids. Not when you look at the law, at the penalties for messing up. And I have to do my job. I don't get to sit there and play video games all day or whatever. And if my teaching sucks for long enough and my students get bad grades for long enough, I mean, yeah, I'll probably won't get rehired. I get separated from the district. Maybe I won't, keep my license because I didn't meet up to standards. That's a real thing. But it's not like I'll go to jail.
No. And
as a teacher, I'm what you call a mandated reporter, just like a social worker or a doctor. If I fail to protect a child, and that's because I work with children.
Right.
If I fail to protect a child from bullying, harassment, any kind of physical or sexual abuse, I am in some really deep shit.
Sure.
And here in Pennsylvania, it's anything from a 2nd-degree misdemeanor to a 2nd-degree felony. You'll go to jail if you fail or refuse to report. So this means that you not only have to if you see signs of it, you have to affirmatively do something about it. You are not allowed to turn the other cheek, turn a blind eye. And you can get in trouble even if you didn't mean to turn a blind eye, because it's like, you should have known. You should have known. We get trainings every year about how to spot child neglect and abuse, how to tell the difference between what's going between, a family facing hard times and abuse going on at home. And you damn well bet your bottom that we are trained every year in bullying, harassment, and teen suicide and school shootings. Every single year. These laws, the bullying laws, have been on the books for nearly 50 years. 50 years. Well, maybe not the bullying laws, but certainly the reporting laws have been on the books for 50 years. So my responsibility to keep kids safe is actually more important than my responsibility to make sure that they can tell me the plot of a novel.
Right.
And I won't go to jail if they can't figure out, who the main character is in Raisin in the Sun or something like that. I let some kid get hurt, I might go somewhere for a long time.
Yeah.
And so by tolerating this atmosphere of harassment at Central Bucks, never mind the fact that it seems to be deliberately encouraged by everything I've read. It sure seems to me that a lot of people could eventually be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. I don't want to get too into the weeds in the whole Central Bucks district because we're just using it as an example. But I want to note that the ACLU sued them for violating Title IX and the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment for creating a hostile environment for LGBTQ kids. And among the things the ACLU accused them of doing, and this was by, quote, complicit upper level administrators. Okay. So it accused them of making homophobic and transphobic statements, censoring books, putting in procedures against using the students' correct pronouns, like they can't do that, censoring materials that teachers can hang in classrooms. Big one would be pride flags, like take it down.
And it's crazy. And from what I understand, they're intimidating students into self-censoring their materials, punishing staff who speak out against these anti-LGBTQ plus directives. It's just absolutely crazy. And so to wrap this up, because we got to move on, the district hired a law firm to investigate whether they were creating a hostile environment for gay kids. And of course, the law firm that was paid for by Central Bucks District found that their employer, Central Bucks District, was just fine for gay kids. Just absolutely fine.
Shocking what lawyers can tell you when you pay them.
It's amazing. So then the district used that finding to go after Burgess again, this time for making false statements. And they suspended him a second time. And the ACLU apparently is suing the district again on Burgess's behalf.
Yeah, and this whole thing with Burgess is disgraceful, but it's not isolated. I mean, things like this are going on all over the country.
Yeah, everywhere. And less so in a place like Philly where we have actual real problems to worry about. But yeah, it's everywhere.
Here's the thing, Brendan. I mean, maybe Democrats and Republicans can't agree on guns, right? And restricting guns as a way to stop school shootings, keep our kids safe in school. But you'd hope that we could agree on anti-bullying policies, particularly because it's the type of thing that you can do without trying to restrict somebody's guns.
Exactly. Yeah, but no, because the Republican school boards and the school administrators, at least in Central Bucks, are doing the bullying themselves.
Right.
And speaking of bullying, how's the Freedom Caucus's favorite punching bag, Kevin McCarthy, doing this week? It's like every day that guy's getting a wedgie or someone's taking his lunch money. And to be honest, I think we're screwed. I'm not a betting man, but I think it's a sure bet that we got a government shutdown at the end of September.
Oh, for sure. I mean, here's the thing about McCarthy. You remember back in, what was it, like June of 2022, there was this big piece in Politico magazine by this reporter, Michael Schaffer. The name of the article was, "Many reporters think Kevin McCarthy is dumb. Why can't they say so?"
Oh yeah, that was a great piece. That was you said that to me right before the midterm, so it was right before he became speaker, and it was hilarious because it was basically just everybody who covers Capitol Hill for a living thinks McCarthy is dumb. They all think he's an idiot, not the sharpest tool in the shed. And my one of my favorite quotes, "A golden retriever of a man."
It's so accurate, right? Oh my God. There's so many stuff in that article. He's not a policy wonk. He's not known to have a mind for policy. Quote, "There are those who privately question his policy chops and intellectual abilities." And what Schaffer calls, and this is significant for avoiding a government shutdown, his quote, "tactical boneheadedness."
Here's another excerpt from the article that I love. Quote, sorry, I breathed too hard in the mic. Sorry, podcasters. Quote, "In a strange way that is hard to explain, he's gotten more stupid the longer he's here," opines a longtime Capitol Hill reporter who has watched McCarthy since his early days of palling around with the wonkier likes of Paul Ryan and Eric Cantor. I'll put that aside for a moment. But his point, because these are all quotes that Schaffer gathered from talking to reporters and citing their articles about McCarthy, is that whatever reporters think or say privately, they use all these euphemisms in print instead of just coming right out and writing that the man is a freaking moron. And maybe the public would be better served if they were more blunt about it. Maybe then a nitwit and sheer nincompoop like McCarthy wouldn't become speaker, but he did.
Yeah, he did. And he became speaker in January, but only after like a humiliating days-long process where he had to grovel and beg likes of Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene. And he made like all kinds of impossible promises, and those promises are coming due now.
Yeah, it was like the first time in nearly a century that it took more than a single ballot to get a speaker named. It took this fool 15 tries to finally gain the speaker's gavel. And like you said, he had to put on the brown lipstick and promise the world to the wingnuts.
Yeah, and both before, during, and after that whole spectacle, I question why he even wanted the job, because he probably wouldn't be able to keep it. And it would just result in frustration and ultimately failure.
And that's just because of something we call basic math, which a stupid guy like McCarthy, maybe he's got a little trouble with that.
Yeah, because, it's math mainly. I mean, it's not even because the House has a bunch of crazy, unmanageable lunatic Republicans, because, I mean, they certainly do have that, but it's really because he doesn't have a functional majority.
And that's because there was no red wave like all the media was predicting. And the GOP barely won the House. Real squeaker.
Yeah. And so what happens is at the beginning of the year, he's got, I don't know, a tiny majority. So there's been a little flux since the beginning of the year. There's like a Democrat that retired to do something else. There's a Republican who just last Friday stepped down. But, one person who's still there is George Santos. I checked and he's still voting.
That is just insane.
Yeah. But anyway, there's like 2 vacancies in the House right now. So there's like 433 members instead of 435. And McCarthy has a 221 to 212 majority. So do the math.
Right. Yeah, if he loses 5 votes, he can't pass anything. Nothing.
He can't pass anything. And it's even tougher than that, because one of the demands he had to make or cave into to become speaker was he had to put a bunch of these troglodytes on the rules committee. And he put enough of them on there that they can block what he wants to do so that he can't even bring bills to the floor.
Right.
So the most important thing in all of this is Congress has one main job, which is to appropriate money.
Power of the purse.
Yeah, the power of the purse. And they decide which agencies, the Justice Department, NASA, the EPA, the Pentagon, they decide how much money they get. And then, of course, when they borrow money, they also have to pay their fucking debts on time. Those are the 2 key unavoidable functions that Congress has to do, and the Republicans can't perform either of them.
Yeah, they can't.
And so here's a basic analysis that undergirds everything I've written and predicted about Kevin McCarthy and his stupid speakership. Forget about Democrats and Republicans. The functional majority in Congress is the majority that does 2 things. They vote for the spending bills and they pay our debts.
Yep.
And it's been clear ever since we saw the results of the 2022 midterm elections that the functional majority in the House of Representatives consists of the Democrats mainly. And however many Republicans McCarthy needs to join with them to keep the government open and operational.
It's like the John Boehner nightmare times a million. And because for real, and it's that nightmare because the government might shut down. It probably will, in fact, but eventually it reopens, hopefully.
Eventually it reopens, like that much we know. It's not going to be permanently shut down. And McCarthy knows this. I mean, he was on Fox News Sunday saying, quote, "I've been through shutdowns And I've never seen somebody win a shutdown, because when you shut down, you give all your power to the administration. How are you going to win your arguments to secure the border if the border agents don't get paid? So not only does he know that he has to pass the spending bills, but he also knows that shutting down the government is bad politics.
Well, to your point then, when they resolved the debt ceiling back in May and June, yeah, they did that with the Fiscal Responsibility Act of 23, and more Democrats voted for it than Republicans.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I have to give credit to McCarthy for pulling that off, because I thought his speakership might end right there back in May. But he managed to pay our bills and survive, and barely. And now we'll get to see if he can exceed my expectations again.
Yeah, but here's what I don't quite get. So he went through the debt ceiling thing.
Yeah.
So he knows how this works. Presumably, he knows he needs Democrats for any deal to keep the government open. And then people like Matt Gaetz are going to freak out and make a motion to vacate the chair to remove him as speaker.
It's unavoidable because of the math.
So when the motion comes up to kick him out, he's going to need Democrats to save him too.
Absolutely.
So, well, then why did he make this big concession to the hard right to begin an impeachment inquiry against Joe Biden?
Well, we've been over this. It's because he's stupid and he suffers from what Schaffer calls tactical boneheadedness.
Because it's like the Democrats, I mean, during this whole ridiculous period we're in, have always sounded like they'd save his ass. And they said as much back during the debt ceiling, that if there was a motion to vacate over paying our bills on time, that they would save McCarthy as a reward to him for doing the right thing.
Yep.
But I don't see, now that he's decided to, in fact, I've already seen that now that he's decided to start an impeachment over these ridiculous made up charges, the Democrats are like, go jump in a lake, dude. Take a long walk off a short pier. Save yourself. I mean, they're not interested in helping anymore.
He's truly a stupid man.
But yeah, he is, because, which is why the so-called moderate Republicans, they didn't want him to start the impeachment thing, but now they're dropping their objections. And at least that's what NBC News is reporting. I mean, it's moving really fast, of course, but
yeah,
on to you.
Well, that's the thing. They didn't want him to do this impeachment thing. They don't want to shut the government down. But now that, he did do the impeachment thing, and now that he might get challenged from the hard right, the moderates that support McCarthy, they're trying to save him rather than piling on. So now all of a sudden, the whole impeachment thing isn't such a terrible idea, because if they say that, they're not supporting Kevin. It's silly.
Yeah.
So pretty much every Republican up on the Hill right now just seems to be a coward, whether it's dealing with Trump or it's dealing with the right-wing media or the Freedom Caucus maniacs that are pushing impeachment. And for McCarthy, impeachment did nothing for him. It brought him no goodwill whatsoever from the right, which was completely predictable for anyone who isn't stupid.
So the next big thing is September 30th, I guess, right? Because that's when the money runs out and the government shuts down the next day.
Yeah. Unless they pass a continuing resolution, the government shuts down on October 1st. So, yeah. And to summarize, I mean, I've been wondering all along why McCarthy even wanted this job in the first place, because I knew he'd eventually face the same decision John Boehner faced. With Boehner, the hard right demanded a total shutdown until Planned Parenthood funding was completely eliminated.
I remember that.
Yeah. And then Mark Meadows, you remember Mark Meadows, right, Brendan?
Oh, I sure do. That's Donald Trump's chief of staff, right? Indicted however many times in Georgia.
Yeah. For coup plotting.
Yeah.
Back then, Meadows was a member of Congress and a member of the Freedom Caucus. And he was going to introduce a motion to vacate the chair resolution against Boehner over this Planned Parenthood thing. And so Boehner quit.
Yeah.
And then he wrote a book. He went back to Ohio, all pissed off, smoking his cigarettes, drinking his bourbon. And then he wrote a book about all these maniacs in the Freedom Caucus and how much he hated them, which, that's one of the things I admire most about John Boehner.
Yeah, I don't blame him one bit for that. Not one bit.
No. But the thing is, Boehner could have kept his job, maybe, if he'd been willing to serve as the head of a governing coalition made up mostly of Democrats. The governing coalition that always exists, which is the one that passes spending bills and pays our debts on time. And it's not necessarily, Brendan, a partisan majority.
Yep. We've seen that a couple times so far.
Yeah. But the thing is, at that point, if you do that, then you're no longer the leader of the Republicans in the House. You're the leader of the House as a whole, which is, actually the proper definition of the speaker in the first place.
Well, that's why the speaker is elected by the whole House rather than just by one party. Yeah. And speaking of the Republican Party, they are fracturing more and more every day. We don't have the time to go into it right now, but going on behind the scenes with this fight over the government shutdown, you have various factions within factions within factions of the Republican Party, and none of them can agree on anything. And maybe McCarthy can be that kind of speaker of a broader coalition that, like you says, pays the bills and passes our spending bills and pays our debts. But it's probably too late because the Democrats are ticked off about impeachment.
Yeah. That was like, to me, his last chance to save himself. At some point they're going to pay the bills and they're going to do it. And he could be the leader that did it, but he can't be the leader of the Republicans. They're going to make that very obvious.
Yep. He can't be both.
It'll be interesting, right, Brendan?
It's going to be interesting. There's going to be plenty of drama. Well, folks, we got to wrap this up. Thanks for listening to this, the 4th episode of the Progress Pondcast. Please tell all your friends. Please like and subscribe. Please share our links on Facebook. Please find us on the platform of your choice. Drop us a couple comments if you see that opportunity on Spotify. I know some of the platforms allow you to tell us what you think. One of the things that we're thinking about doing is dropping links to our sources in our description so people can see where we're getting our information from. We like to cite our information, give ourselves a little bit more credibility than some folks have. But anyway, we'll see you next time. On behalf of me, Brendan Squire, and my good friend over here, Marty Longman. On behalf
of the Royal Hounds, my friend. What about the Royal Hounds?
Oh my God! And Jeff, thank you very much. I almost forgot. On behalf of me, Brendan Squire, Marty Longman, and the fabulous Royal Hounds out of Nashville, Tennessee, the best honky tonk rock and roll band you're going to see in your lifetime. We'll see you next time. Adios.
Don't forget to like and subscribe, folks.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.